present. We did hold a meeting 2 weeks ago, and can we get approval of those minutes, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No, nobody. All right, we have one new piece in front of us today. Ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into an agreement without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Bright Computers for the renewal of NetMotion software and or related services and declare an emergency. And I'm guessing you are going to present this, correct? Sure. All right, well, thank you. You don't seem too excited. Come on, we got to get excited about this piece.
This is very exciting.
All right, there we go. Moving forward.
So basically, we need to renew 318 NetMotion licenses. A NetMotion license is nothing more than a license for a mobile device to connect to the city's network.
Okay.
We renew these yearly, and we have 318 of them out in the field. So that is the request, which is $20,389.69.
Okay. I'm just going to ask a question real quick. Have we ever renewed this before? Or is this like a yearly? I don't think I've ever seen this piece before.
Yeah, it is a yearly renewal. This is the first time I've done it because I've only been in the
Okay.
position for 9 months, but every year you have to renew these.
Okay. Just don't ring a bell. All right. Well, thanks. Questions, Councilwoman Keith, please.
Has the licensing increased from last year? I know you may not have that answer because you're just been on 9 months, but do you happen to know?
That's a good question. It has gone up. The exact numbers I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I'm guessing maybe 20. Yeah. Every time we put a device out in the field that has to have connectivity to the city's network requires a license. So we have added some. That specific number I don't have.
When you say 20, did you mean 20%?
No, like 20 total probably. Like 20 additional devices.
Oh, 20.
Device,
Oh,
yeah.
I just meant if the contract, the price of the contract gone up.
Oh, that I don't know, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all right. Thank you for that other information.
Okay.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Any other questions from committee members? No. Council members in chambers? No. Did you want that information? I'd like to get it, no?
I would like it, but
Okay. Hold it up, yeah. Well, if you don't mind, and we're not going to hold this up if we have to put it on consent or suspension of the rules, but we would like to that number if that's okay.
So you, just to clarify, you're asking me for last year's numbers versus this year's numbers. Is that correct?
Well,
What the increase was. Yeah.
Okay.
and you already told us that there are 20 new contacts that are going to be licensed into this stuff. But if there was an increase in just the licensing, that would be
Yep. Yeah, and if you don't mind, send me that email or all
Absolutely.
council members if you're able to do that.
I can do that.
Okay. Is this time sensitive? Is this something that you need done today or consent agenda okay?
Yeah, I would say so. We can wait.
Wait,
if
okay.
You want that information.
All right, so can I get a motion for consent?
Second.
All right, we got a second and a motion. All in favor? Aye. Nobody opposed? All right, so we'll put that on consent agenda. I appreciate that. With that, that's our only piece. We're adjourned. Thanks.
Ms. Sims and Madam President,
Okay, we're gonna start the Parks and Rec. 30 seconds. Give me a minute, sir.
okey dokey. Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon. We'll open the Park and Rec Committee meeting. We have some brief minutes, so I'll ask if, not sure if everyone had a chance to read them yet, but if I could get an approval of our last meeting's minutes, which go back to February 4th, 2019.
Motion for approval.
Can I get a second? Second. The motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. I don't think anybody is opposed. So we've been working on getting entertainment within our individual wards. I want to thank the Park and Rec Department for providing us with a list. I just want to make sure everyone understands, because I'll need your help here, Madam President. To my understanding, and if everybody has a list, now there are city-planned events in every ward. Wards 1, 3, 5, and 6 now have 3 city-sponsored events. But to my understanding, and this is where I need your help, Madam President, Mr. John Valley is also waiting for us, and when I say us, individual council persons, to schedule what, we each have the opportunity to schedule 3 more events on top of these. So the communities where they regularly have their events, I think they still pretty much have they may be short 1 or 2 events, but they still have at least 7 events, if not, some have more. But for those of us who are now getting 3 events sponsored by the city, and if you look at, if you have the summer concert series, it's outlined, we also have 3 other events. I ask that you please, let's try to get these into Mr. Valley by within the next week or so, because the goal is we want everybody to be able to be inside the water, the summer concert guide. It makes it a lot easier for folks to know what's going on. So with that, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to it. Okay. I do want to say this, because I think some of us will share the same thing. We mentioned some of the groups that would like to perform are Real Deal. Help me out. Who's this? Who's the lady?
Yvonne James.
Yvonne James. Is there Silk and Rare Image? Rare Image. And was there one called Silk too?
I don't know about Silk.
Okay. But you're not limited to bands. You could also have movies in the park. So this is just to inform groups so that we can get the rest of the information in. I suggest a good thing is to work with the community groups inside your ward so that possibly can piggyback on an event that they're doing, just to help them with what they're doing. If there aren't any questions, I'll just ask that we all have our information together as hopefully by next week. If there's nothing, Mr. Kamer? Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, the second sheet I received in my mailbox that says 2017 and 2018 community and special events.
Yes, sir.
Was that provided by the administration?
Yes.
All right. Well, obviously, no one's here from the administration, so thank you. I do have questions in regards to that, because I see, like, in 2017, it says Ward 7, 11, and in 2018, Ward 7, 35. I'd like to know what some of those events are.
Well, I can't answer it totally, but I can, based on past conversations, I think these are any times, of course, these aren't city-sponsored events. Anytime one of our community groups do something, but like you, I would like to know, because one, I would like to know what, if any, expense it is to the city, and what value comes from those events. I think each council person could probably speak for their own ward, so that we can support them. I mean, these groups that do these events are ones, as we look to grow the My Neighborhood Akron City Council grant, good ones to tie them into, so that they can leverage those resources. But like you, I would like to know, because I mean, we all know that certain wards have more activity.
Well, yeah, and my concern is, yeah, I kind of agree with you, but my main concern is, as I look at this, and I look at 2018, Ward 7, 35 events, if a resident looked at that, like you said, it could be some community events, some nonprofits, some organizations that held certain events there, but it wasn't associated with tax dollars that citizens contribute. So I really think those numbers, in my opinion, are misleading. So that's it. I mean, I really like that, to comment really quick about all the concerts. I really appreciate that we're expanding that to serve the whole city and all the wards, but I just want to see if we can get some more clarification in regards to those numbers.
Thank you, sir. Point duly noted, and we will ask for that breakdown. If there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn, please. So move second. Thank you. We're adjourned.
I'd like a budget for concerts for at-large people. No, it's not.
Madam, you should have asked that during the meeting, but we'll get that information for
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chairman. No, this one's not live either. This one is live. His mic is on. His mic is off.
Yeah,
Hello? This one's not live.
turn that on.
I'd like to call the Health and Social Services Committee to order. We haven't met for a long time. Are there any minutes anywhere, Mr. Keith? Okay. Okay. We'll come back to that. Welcome, the Senior Citizens Commission, and thank you so very much for coming. I did take the time this weekend, and I read your report. It's quite enlightening. So would you like to introduce yourselves, and then whoever's going to start can kick it off?
Hi, my name is Susan Sigmund, and I'm with Direction Home, formerly known as Area Agency on Aging, and it's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'm Harvey Stearns. I chair the commission, and I am also the director of the Institute for Lifespan Development and Gerontology at the University of Akron.
Hi, I'm Karen Herdlicka. I am the president of Vantage Agent, used to be Mature Services, and also a citizen of Ward 10.
Now, Karen, please pronounce your name slowly, the last name. I've known you forever, and I still can't get it.
Herdlicka. So it's like putting an E in there, Herdlicka.
Okay. Herdlicka.
That's right.
Herdlicka, okay.
Hello, I'm Brenna Herman. I'm Senior Manager of Resident Services at Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority.
Yes, Brenna, I know you.
I'm Wileen Edwards, a citizen of Akron, Ohio, all of my life, and I represent senior citizens in my area.
Thank you for coming.
I'm Francis Ladd. I'm the Assistant Director of Summit County Job and Family Services, and I also represent seniors. I just turned 60.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing. With that, we'll turn it over to Ms. Sigmund. I think Dr. Stearns indicated that you were going to start the presentation?
He did he? Well, I'll start out and certainly defer to others here. We hope that this would be more of a conversation.
Sure.
But we wanted to let you know, first of all, that that we are very honored to be part of the Senior Citizens Commission. We all take our roles very seriously, and we're very pleased that this commission has been reconvened, and that emphasis is now being, that re-emphasis is now being on older adults of our community. We have spent the last year or so holding a series of listening sessions, of which you have received the report from that series of listening sessions, and it was fascinating. We learned a lot. We learned what's good, what's not so good, and but what we heard first and foremost was what a genuine commitment the residents of Akron have to their communities. They love their neighborhoods, they love their communities, and they really are invested in staying here. And it was through those listening sessions that I believe we all then had a renewed, reinvigorated sense of determination that we really wanted to serve these older adults in the best way we could. So again, we appreciate the opportunity, and we perhaps some of my colleagues would like to go into a little bit deeper as to the findings of the report.
Let me also say that I also represent as an older adult Ward 8, but I also was the founding chairman of the Commission on Aging in 1974. And the city had a very active Commission on Aging for many years, and then unfortunately ceased being in existence. But it's very important that we have recreated it, and you will see in our report today, and then we will also want to describe for you the process of initiating the Age-Friendly Cities Initiative. But I'm going to turn to my colleague, Brenda Herman, who did the summary report, to talk about the major findings.
Okay, just so you know, these are directional mics, so just speak a few inches away from it, not right on top of it, but then everybody can hear you. and it's also being recorded.
Thank you. So the handouts that you received really just kind of summarize the findings that we had from the listening sessions that we had throughout the city of Akron. We really went into the listening sessions with the mindset of looking at the domains of age-friendly cities, and I think we'll kind of discuss more of those as we go through. But what we really did was use our script for the listening sessions, so we were consistent throughout the each session that we went to, and we really just collaborated with the senior rec centers to make sure that we could make the connection and get our notices out for seniors as they responded to our request to show up and have a nice lunch through Vantage Aging. So if you would just kind of go through a couple of the highlights that we talked about, we're really, again, consistent going through the domains, the 8 domains of age-friendly cities. So at each group we talked about, this is on page 2, number 4, just public space, transportation, housing, loneliness and socializing, diversity and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information sharing, community and health services. So those were the main topics that we talked about. And really what we found on page 3, we just divided into the main issues that we saw as we went through each of the community meetings, safety, and just divide them into these categories: safety, communication, services, and transportation. We added in the identified safety because that was a consistent issue that seniors discussed and wanted to make sure that in their neighborhood that they that public services were available, but they knew how to report concerns and what were the issues of how to get follow-up on that. And so a lot of times our discussion was about home safety, and people felt safe in their homes, but it was going outside maybe because of the neighborhood, things that were happening that really concerned them. So as far as safety issues, really we looked at crosswalks, abandoned buildings, senior lockbox, which was a discussion at our last meeting that was held. So it was really about how our seniors could access services and what their main concerns were. Any of my other commission members want to make a comment? I feel like I'm just going through. But again, if we went through communication, which was the next main topic, as you see through the list in the categories, the headings, just really interested in knowing how they can be involved in their community with activities that were going on, volunteer opportunities. They ask about free Wi-Fi and training and being on top of what's happening in the community, but it was also called that they really wanted to make sure that that we didn't forget that not everyone is computer savvy and not everyone has Wi-Fi and access to computers, so we wanted to make sure that our communication really relayed all forms of communication and to not forget about them. And I think the other topic under communication was really for calls made to 311, how did they find out, get feedback on what happened with their calls? So those were some of the issues that we had come up. The third category, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. I had an opportunity to be a part of one of the listening sessions in North Hill. It seems that relative to communication that there were real language barriers. In addition to not knowing how to navigate, it was just the barrier of just understanding really what was going on. Does the report address that in any way? And I would like to know kind of like some of those ways we did that. I think that the group as a whole really responded really well, and there were folks in the audience that could help, but there's still to be, that seemed like a big noose around the neck of many of the folks who live in North Hill. Thank you.
Absolutely, thanks for that question. On page 10, there's really a summary of what the concerns were at each of the listening sessions that we held. And the last one, it was held at the Well at 647 East Market. And it did talk about language barriers and issues that the attendees really relayed that they had issues with. And some of the things were that we looked at were some great ideas about being able to have more intergeneration or intercultural programming in the community learning centers at North High School. And then they also suggested having different individual services come in and talk with a translator to help bridge that gap for communication issues.
I don't know if anybody else had a comment before we get into questions from the committee or council members. Did anybody else want to? Go ahead.
I'll just quickly add that, communication invariably comes up in any kind of listening sessions. And what I heard over and over was that there was some low-hanging fruit, some really quick fixes that I think we could do, like a designated space on the City of Akron's website, and just really simple things that I think would be a really quick win. I know that's under that broad heading of communication, and I think your question is a little more specific as far as those barriers. But again, I think if we can think about how we can go for the quick wins, I think that'll really get us further down the road too.
Sure. Go ahead.
So if you want to look at the PowerPoint, I think that's where we as a commission kind of got together and looked at and gave actionable items that we think that City Council and the city could do pretty quickly. So at the bottom of page 2, communication. One of the things we recognize is our listening sessions, and as you know, the mayor announced that we are going forward with the Age-Friendly City Initiative. So there will be a larger study that's done. So this is really a small study that was done in this. But people at home don't have access to come to our Senior Citizens Commission meetings. And we've been giving information to people on issues that have come. People have come to us with issues. But if we had a space on the website where we could post our minutes so that seniors that can't come to our meetings could get that information, and also a link to gettingwiser.org. That was funded by the Akron Community Foundation, and it's a new website that gives a lot of information to older adults, because we find countywide access to information is an issue. On page 3, when we talk about safety, the Knox box, the fire department has made it very clear that that's the standard of which that they want to go to. But when we were looking at that, the city, if they were able to buy those boxes in bulk, it makes it much more affordable to the seniors, and maybe have a way that they could purchase that through payments to the city. And it would make it easier, the fire department even said it would make it easier to not have to call, try to find somebody to open someone's house, that if someone is in an emergent situation, having that Knox box just like they have on the businesses would be really helpful. And then senior citizen high density areas, especially in the Kenmore area, they had just recently, when we had our listening session, had a senior citizen that was hit by a car in the area. So where you have high density senior housing, really thinking about that, handling those areas as if they're school zones. So you're having, police every once in a while checking, slowing down, those type of things. So just as a kind of overall, those were things that out of the whole report we thought, because we could, there's so many things as people age that we can do to support people, and really what the city's doing as a totality with the bike lanes and that, those are wheelchair lanes too.
Yeah.
It's all good things for the city. So.
Let me just say this. First of all, I am very glad that the mayor reactivated this commission. I think we all know that individuals are living longer, and we have lots of senior citizens out there. So that's number one. So that's very good news. I'm curious as to, and it's not a criticism as much as I just want to know, how do you go about selecting the community centers? Because I noticed the ones that you chose, and the couple that were missed. Was there any particular reason that you chose these particular 7 areas?
It was with the Parks Department, and it was where they could gather and had support from the leader. So we kind of left that to the city of, we fall underneath the Parks and Rec Department, so we
Okay.
let them schedule the meetings for us.
Okay. Because I know that you said in the back that this is just a beginning and there's lots of opportunities to expand this, and that's actually true. And I'm so glad, Susan, that you said that there are lots of areas, because as I read this, I wrote down that there are lots of ways that we can really coordinate and collaborate on so many of the things that you identified that could be extremely helpful and could be done rather quickly. We have lots of resources in this community, and a number of things could be easily addressed by connecting with things that are already in existence. So I was very pleased to see that. Now, when we get to on these 8 issues on page 2, they're not listed in any way of priority. They're just listed, public space, okay. Because I was looking at this and I was thinking to myself that with a lot of the seniors, loneliness and lack of socialization, those things are really big, and health issues. But since it's not prioritized, we don't have to address that. One other thing you said in this report that I love so much is at the end, when you said whatever we do for seniors, you really are doing it for the entire community, and that is so true. Because we are, when I say we, I'm a little younger than some of these seniors, but that's, skip that comment. No, I'm up there. But no, when we address issues of senior citizens, you're addressing family issues, because everybody is, sandwiched. And the more help we can give to families and seniors, the more we help the larger community. So that came through loud and clear for me. The other thing that was interesting, when we talked about communication, when they sample seniors, they say that they are not really into social media. However, when they have access to the instruments and the materials and they learn how to use it, it appeared from this that they actually use those tools to communicate. So that was very helpful to see as well. And then we talked about putting stuff in utility bills and in newspapers and all of that. So there's just so many ways that we can tap into giving the seniors more information. I found this to be quite helpful, and I know that we can build upon it, and that is the piece that I found to be exciting. So with that, I know that Mr. Mikovich, I don't know, Mrs. Sims, did you finish? Mr. Mikovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on communication component, I know a few years back there were, down at the State House, there were thinking about doing away with the landlines. And I know a lot of seniors, that's how they communicate with their doctors, getting their prescriptions. My mother, she does not have a cell phone, and she used a landline. In the future, is there ways that we can get this information out to our seniors and let them assure them that these cell phones are the future, and if you guys could speak to that, I appreciate it.
I can take that. So I mentioned I work for the Area Agency on Aging. There's an Area Agency on Aging in every county of the United States. Ohio is divided into 12 regions, and by our framework, we came out of the Older Americans Act, and back when the civil rights was rising up, that's when Older Americans Act came out as well. And in that, the reason area agencies on aging exist is for advocacy, supplying home-delivered meals, legal aid, transportation, but first and foremost is the advocacy part. And so our trade association in Columbus actually was very involved with advocating that, especially in our rural areas, that landline was their only mode of connectivity. And so we are definitely at the forefront of advocating for that. And I use, hopefully I don't abuse, but I use the commission to relay those types of information to the folks that are attending. And I could see us, you know, again, as we're talking about communication, if we had, you know, a more formal way of posting things, that would be an ideal example of something that we could you know, post. Yep.
I think that's one blessing of the people that are on the commission. Right after the well, we met with Asia Inc. to talk about, because we didn't realize as Job and Family Services, we needed to expand more of our services, talk about how we can translate some of our stuff into their language so to help them. One of the blessings here too is the fact that we all work together. When there's a problem, we all communicate together, and I think it's opened our eyes, and we've opened up the door and had more collaborations between ourselves. So I think that communication will help the community in the long run.
And I would like to point out that the commission is a resource to all of you as council people. One of the things that a commission can do is to problem solve. When you have a particular constituent who has a particular problem, we can be a resource for information for you, and we can connect you to the available services. The other thing that was very compelling to me, having been involved in this work for almost 50 years, is one of the biggest issues was a sense of well-being living in the city of Akron, feeling safe to shop in your supermarket and know when you come out that you're not going to be harassed, walking down the street and feeling comfortable because much of the block is still open or abandoned houses. So the quality of our neighborhoods is clearly an issue. So these are all grassroots issues that really are important. And I think we haven't talked about them in a long time, so I think it's good that we can start that conversation. But one of the things that comes out of the initiative that we wanted to present to you today on age-friendly cities allows us to actually build off of the initial information that we presented today with a full, in-depth, random and representative survey that will really establish needs of our community. And just so you know, the 8 domains include public space, transportation, housing, loneliness and socialization, diversity and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information sharing, and community. And so these are the domains. What has to happen is, based on survey, we would have to decide on which priorities. And if we want to look at what other cities have done, Akron will be, when we put in our application, will be the 5th city in Ohio to engage in this process. The city that is farthest along in the process is Cleveland. They go back to almost 2014 in their initial start. And we can learn from their priorities, but we may not want to do all 8 domains initially. We have to set priorities. We realize that some things are much more, we're much more able to intervene and work within the abilities of our city resources. The important thing is to know what are the strengths and weaknesses of our community. The other thing is that we also want to present to you a little bit about the structure of what is being proposed. So I think in view of time, we might move to that, unless there are further questions. Yes?
I did have a question.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have rest first.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Okay. Just something I kind of wanted to put out here, because I did notice on page 2, it says that there's a need for communication liaison between the city and the commission. And really and truly, you know, this body, us as elected officials, council people, we are your liaison, you know, that person that can kind of, you know, let you know what's happening in the city, but also have an opportunity to really hear the concerns of our seniors. And so I know that we kind of have an issue, because when you meet, we're meeting, you know, during committee. And so just kind of wanted to put out there, I don't know if the commission is open to maybe, you know, moving the time just so that we can better help serve the mission of what you guys are trying to do.
I think we're very open to it. And that comment of communication liaison is somebody in the city that actually can put it out on the website, get it out in a press release, so that the reason we've kept it the same time in the same place is because people know where we are right now. So if we had an opportunity to advertise where we were going to meet, because we've even talked about meeting in the evening, because there are a lot of older adults that work still. So we're very open to moving our meeting around. We just want to make sure that people know where we are, and that's where we were kind of looking for somebody that could communicate where we're meeting.
Yeah, so I mean, just putting it out there, maybe even like if you like Monday, maybe even like 5 o'clock on Monday might be easier for, maybe council members to participate.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing to that, and this is on to when we do the age-friendly initiative. There will be an advisory council, so it'll be on the Senior Citizens Commission that will involve members of council, that will involve a little bit of the broader community that is taking on this initiative as well. And then we have an administration person liaison in planning that can just be the liaison between, what's going on there and the administration. So that's what that is. So there'll be a broader discussion about advisory council as well once we start that process with the AARP. Yep.
In fact, it might be appropriate to introduce Dylan Garantano, who is going to serve as the liaison. He's sitting right in the back there. He's serving as the liaison from the Planning Commission to our initial committee. He's working with us in terms of initiating all of the various processes. And we have a letter emerging, right? So the formal application will be made. And let me just say that what will happen initially, the Age-Friendly Cities process comes out of the World Health Organization worldwide emphasis on age-friendly cities. And in the United States, AARP took on this role as the coordinators, and Ohio AARP is the group that is supporting the effort in the cities in Ohio, including Akron. What happens in this process, the mayor submits a letter of intent to enroll in the network along with the completed application. That application is under development, and then we're working with Doug Tyack from Ohio AARP. That then application goes in, and that will also be approved at the national level. Susan Sidman and I had the opportunity to go to a special conference on age-friendly cities back in November, and so we are fully versed in many of the aspects of what we have to do. The next step is to form a core group, and Direction Home agreed to serve as the lead agency following the model that was utilized in age-friendly Columbus. And the University of Akron has agreed to provide funding and staffing to conduct the community assessment. And Susan and I have agreed to work together as co-chairs with the overall initiative. The core group will be made up of members of the commission and some additional individuals who will be selected to make it fully representative. And then there will be a much larger, greater advisory council with various representatives from city departments, as well as other constituencies in the city. I could go into more detail about membership, but the fact of the matter is that we will reach out for the talent in our community in these various domains. We have some very exceptional people in Akron who work at the national level in areas such as transportation and housing, so we certainly have that opportunity. Then what happens in the first year, basically the survey takes place, and then based on that survey we will develop a 3-year community-wide action plan based on the assessment findings. And that of course would reflect all of us in this room's interpretation of the data. Now there are limitations, just remember when you collect data, then you have information, and you may or may not like what the data tells you. I think it will point out in very important ways areas that we need to focus on. Then, based on what we think are the highest priorities, we would then develop an action plan for the next 3-year period. And then there's an assessment where we are at the end of the 3 years, and then we move on to the next stage of the planning process. So this is a 5-year commitment in reality in terms of this whole approach. We know from the cities that have already done this that they have gained enormously in terms of their understanding of the dynamics of the community, needed services, and also how to use resources most effectively. I think that we all are concerned about doing as much as we can, but what could be more important than making Akron a place where people want to live the rest of their life?
Very well said. Let me ask you, what is the first step in starting this age-friendly exploration? Do we have a plan, McFadden, in terms of, do we have a resolution or something to kick this off, or how does it work?
I can ask Annie to talk to that.
The first step is actually, Mayor submits a letter to AARP. So we actually created one to Ms. Sykes and actually just forwarded that over today to request, admission into that. And then AARP starts that process. And then we can, once we have the green light from AARP at the state level, then we'll kind of proceed with first step, setting up the advisory council and all that.
So did Cleveland do a similar process, or their process was different? Did they go through AARP as well, or?
The process is somewhat specified under the agreement that AARP, by the way, helps to fund this initial survey.
Okay.
I've committed my time on behalf of the university and have some assistantship and computer time and so forth. But the fact of the matter is the process is fairly specific in terms of the steps that one takes. However, we're completely open to suggestions for refinement. And one of the reasons that I wanted us to get here as soon as possible was because I'm very aware from my years of service previously as chair of the commission that we report both to the mayor and city council, and that we want to make sure that we have good communication all around. And since we're starting anew, we should engage in good habits, hopefully.
Very good. We appreciate that thinking. Yes, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. This has been very informative. One thing I want to suggest that we as council properly do, the Akron 2025 plan that was done back when we thought the year 2000 was way out there. I suggest that we as council take a look at that, because it outlined one of the challenges that we would have would be an aging community. And so how do we prepare ourselves from a service standpoint? One of the services that I encourage my seniors to take advantage of if they need to is the curb service, where they walk up and they get your trash can and they bring it. I mentioned, see here where you have the shoveling snow and that type of thing. During this last snowstorm, one of the concerns was, as a city, do we know which seniors live by themselves? I've used this example a lot. If somebody said we've got children under the age of 5 at home by themselves, as a city, we'd be alarmed and we go to bat. But we have seniors who are experiencing early dementia, Alzheimer's at sundown, that's in the same position at a certain time. So we have to get an understanding of where folks are and create that support network. Just like we're looking at creating wraparound services for our youth, we have to create a wraparound service for our seniors. So the Akron 2025 plan would be something good for us as council. And I don't know if you guys have referred it, for us to look at it so that we can see from a service standpoint, what do we have to change? It's my belief that, one, we have to empower our neighborhoods, create a better network for them to be coordinated. Because some networks are stronger than others. And block clubs are nice, but they're a thing of the past, because you have a block club on this block, and then you have to go another mile before you find another organized block club. So some type of network, neighborhood association we need to create so that we can support this type of work, is my belief. But then, I'm looking at some of the things that you have here, like loneliness and socializing. Now, we're fortunate, I don't know if you know of Joyful Seniors, Young at Heart, those groups. And then, I don't know, Alan Manley, when Universal Nursing was around, it started the line dance on Wednesdays. And I'll tell you something. If you're a single man that's a senior, because I would go there, there would be, the numbers would be like 50 to 1. But it would be crowded with people doing, doing line dancing. And then, so I say, again, taking Council President's standpoint, I think each one of us knows maybe some unique things that we could share that would create this network for socialization. Because like in our ward, Project Ujima, on Saturdays, they do a Qigong. We started for infant mortality, but the average age of that group is probably well over 50, and the oldest member is 90. And they're practicing that type of thing. So just to wrap up my comments, one, I think we need to look at reevaluating how we provide services. Because right now, the only connection for our seniors is either the police or their council person. We need neighborhood social workers, so to speak. And that's from our standpoint, to work with the administration, to work with our police unions, and look at maybe creating another person who could be that, where they know intimately each home and can connect that person to services. And then I do think, especially now that we're in the budget cycle, it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to look at what at one time was a futuristic document, now is really, it's here. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Sims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thanks to everybody, because most of you I work with, and I know I've even called you by my own parents. My mom turned 80 last week, and my dad turns 80 on Wednesday. Yes. But one of the things I know that I've worked with most of you to build intergenerationally, so I'm so glad that that is a part of the work we're doing now with Vantage, Cooking with Mom and Them, which is a recipe for building intergenerational relations, where we're looking at our elders and having them share wisdom, cook, and hand down heirloom recipes. So this has been wonderful. But what I noticed is very glaring is the absence of even the presence of our elders in the community. And let me qualify that. On something even like the towpath, there's no visual pictures of elders living strong. And so, although we see them on the towpath, there's nothing that says, hey, you belong here. And so just thinking about, maybe it's not that we're having to wait on AARP. I know it's good to live living in place, but I think living actively in place is equally as important. But one of the challenges, I think, is making sure that they know they are visually invited to be in those spaces. So as we think about, I know it's a 5-year plan, but I think as a city, working with you all, working with Civics Commons, we can start to create those visuals that honor their existence, but also invite their existence into spaces that are or can be very intergenerational and very beneficial to many of the challenges that you all have highlighted here. So again, thank you so much for the work, and thank you always for being open to me. And I just am so excited about what this really, really means for our city. And I concur with Madam Chairwoman that when we do well for our elders, we do well for everyone. This is my last, I think, several years ago when we changed downtown parking, where you go and you go get the ticket out of the booth and then bring it back. I just watched this older lady who was I had to go around the block, but she was 93 years old, and so she was trying to park, but she couldn't figure all that out. And so just, communications, her downtown changed, and it happened, and nobody told her about the new parking. And it was very simple. I mean, I wouldn't have even thought to, how we needed to do that, but to see that experience and seeing what stress that added to her life unnecessarily, made me, a little more mindful is some of even the smaller things that we can communicate better. But again, thank you to this commission, and thank you, and I look forward to being a partner in the work.
Yeah, it's the same kind of work that we were doing when people were leaving institutions and coming back to the community. So many things had changed in the community, and if we didn't have the case managers and social workers introducing people to all of these changes, they would have been totally lost. So certainly, I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I'll get Mr. Fusco in a minute. But so many of these things can, if we have the resources to share with the senior citizens to help educate them about these things, the hands-on, showing them how, I think it makes such a world of difference. Yeah.
Just so you know, that Akron has the largest number of adult protective services referrals that we receive on a monthly basis.
Who does?
City of Akron.
City of
Akron is first, and Barberton is second. And just so you know, we have the Job and Family Services with Adult Protective Services. One of the things that we found was, and that was from being on the commission and from talking to the seniors, was that we brought Direction Home in, so that when we do go into a home, because there are many, many, many seniors that don't come out, that are in their homes, that are afraid to come out or don't have the transportation, or their homes are not accessible so that they can come out. When we do come across those issues, we hook them up with people like Susan Sigmund, Karen, AMHA, so that they can get the services, because you're right, there's no warm handoff anymore. There's nobody to say, hey, this. And it's very, very, the older you get, the more complicated medical care gets, the more complicated systems get. So I do think that anything we do, if we look at some of the screen outs that we get, because for the Adult Protective Services, we have a criteria. And if a call doesn't meet a certain criteria, we screen it out. And one of the things we've been working with Direction Home is getting with them and say, let's look at these screen outs and see how many are from Akron. And what's the biggest need? Is the need the self-neglect? Is it the abuse? Is it the exploitation? Why didn't it meet the criteria? And that may be able to help, because we get calls just like Children's Services does. So I do think that's a good way to look at numbers and look at some of the things that we can do to help.
Chair, thank you.
And just adding to that, so some of the screen outs, we have someone at Job and Family Services also. We have community development block grants from you, thank you very much. And we go out and we look, and we're like the community health worker, and I love that you brought that up, because we actually talked to the community health group with the infant mortality, and in our thought, we were like, why can't we cross-train community health workers to do lifespan? But it really comes down to funding as a totality. And just to add on, when you were talking about Parks and Rec, and that statistically, people's attitude about aging will add 7.5 years to their lifespan. So someone that has a positive idea about aging adds, and those are quality lives. They, reduce their illness and all of those things. So that's good for the society. So when we're talking about festivals, why not? Let's celebrate aging, being intergenerational. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to also make a comment.
Sorry,
It's okay. No, honestly, I'd rather hear than talk. No, please, Dr. Stearns, please. No, in all sincerity, I'd rather listen than talk. So please, we're here to learn from you.
Both are possible. I'd just like to point out that we can talk about people who have specific needs, but a large number of our older adults in the city of Akron are independent, living in their own homes, who are looking for meaningful activities, for engagement in the community. And if you want to know where older adults are, you go look in the theaters, look at the symphony, look at the major, who subscribes to the newspaper and keeps it going, older adults. So let's keep in mind that we want to have the kind of services that our senior centers provide, but at the same time, we also want to understand that there are individuals who are in need of new opportunities for growth and development, which the university and other places can serve as a meeting ground. But we have to consider individual differences. And as I like to point out, it's no accident where old people come from, if you think about it. And so many of us were sitting in this chamber in the 70s as people in their 30s, and now we're here much older. So I'd just like to point out that we need a whole spectrum of design, not just, if you want to get resources, then the sick old poor model is a good way to go, because people are sympathetic. Right. But there are also people where we want to give people a sense of purpose, meaningful activity, involvement. That's what I think is important too. And I think at age 76, I feel that that's something that is important to me and important to my peers.
Sure. One of the things I picked up in this, and something I've known, but it just reminded me that, as you indicated, a lot of the seniors are still working and very active and all of that. But one of the things that came through loud and clear in this report was that as their communities change, they become concerned because they don't know their new neighbors. And then as they become more dependent on someone else to transport them, then they become confined to their homes more than they like, and trying to find a way to keep them engaged and keep them active, those become the resources that are necessary. How do we identify those individuals who are now senior citizens, who used to be very active and outgoing, but they are now kind of reticent about leaving because they don't know their neighborhood as well as they used to, and they don't drive and get around on their own. So those become the concerns that I have for those people. Because you're right, a lot of us seniors are still mobile and doing a lot of wonderful things, but then as things change, that becomes the concern that I have. And how do we identify those folks? And that becomes critical.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, real quick, as everyone said, thank everyone for their effort on this. This is a great report, and one I know that the administration's in support of. Thank you, Dr. Stearns, for all your great work. You took all my comments. Francis Ladd, you took all my comments. Thank you. Because the thing of it is the direction home, and finding even a greater connectivity in terms of the caretakers, and making sure, we had talked about the communication piece. I would just encourage the group in the city and everyone, this infrastructure going forward, that we reach out to the caretakers a little bit more in terms of making sure they know what's going to be available and what's out there, and try to focus those efforts towards those caretakers. And I know we've done quite a few things already. And plus, I know very much that you are heavily involved and recognized, and I think we all need to recognize even though we've had a couple years, if you will, Sally Nyberg and the Recreation Bureau has kept this alive, if you will, in terms of we've got 13 community centers out there, 12 community centers out there with senior groups that are active. And so I think she's done a great job in terms of ensuring that we keep this moving, but this is obviously the next level. And I said, all of us here, everybody on City Council, we want to be involved, so keep us involved. We want to continue to help and support. So, and thank you again for everything that you're doing. Appreciate it.
So I'm not really sure what the next step would be, but this has been a good kickoff for us to find out where you are with this commission. And I'm assuming that someone will tell us where we are in terms of next steps. It sounds like we've applied through AARP, and we wait for them to accept us, and then we move from there. I would assume it's very similar to the welcoming city that we've done, and encouraging people to be more sensitive to the various groups that we have in Akron. So, thank you very much. Did you have something else you wanted to share?
Just two quick comments. I am thrilled to see that you're engaged. That is great, and kudos to each and every one of you for looking us in the eye and saying we want to be engaged, we want to be involved, because that is 3/4 of the battle right there. So thank you for your service, and thank you for being engaged. And just know that we will, as a commission, work to keep that communication open so that you know what our next steps are and what we intend to do. And the last thing I'll say is, use us. I know you get constituent calls. And so please reach out to us, because we can and will be able to serve you as well.
Okay. Thank you so very much for coming. I do have the minutes from our previous meeting. I guess the last time we met was, it looks like, several months ago. May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
The minutes have been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.